lawyers speak in two different languages. They speak in the legal jargon sense and then in the normal sense. So being able to switch between the two is really important. And I think law firms recognize that they can kind of teach you the law, but they can't teach you to be the type of person they'd want to hire. So I think that don't necessarily worry about, not knowing the law.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the Student Lawyer podcast series. Whether you're at school, sixth form, university, thinking about a career in law, or exploring law careers, you're in the right place. We are the one-stop shop for student lawyers. If you'd like to join the Student Lawyer as a writer, please email hello@thestudentLawyer.com. This podcast is brought to you by Feed Ignite. Welcome to the Student Lawyer podcast series. My name's Camilla and I'm an LPC student and future trainee solicitor. In today's episode, we're lucky to be joined by Matthew Berrick. Matthew is a future trainee solicitor at Pinsent Masons. He's also founder of the Legal Lineup and Global Tech Loop platforms. He's author of a book called Legal Insider, which has ranked at #1 on Amazon's bestseller list for law for the layperson, and has also ranked in the top 20 for legal education. So without further ado, let's hand over to Matt. Welcome to the Student Lawyer, Matt. Thanks for joining us.
Oh yeah, cheers for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
Us too. Okay, so let's get straight into the questions. When did you decide that you wanted to become a solicitor, and what attracted you to the world of law?
Sure, yeah. So as like a non-law student myself who's currently studying the GDL, I've had a variety of both legal and non-legal experiences. So my interest in law started from about the age of 15 when I went to go work in Crown Court for a QC. I was also very interested in politics, and I worked on a mayoral campaign, leafleting, and worked for an MP in the House of Commons. I also was selected for the NATO negotiation exercise at the Foreign and Commonwealth Office.
Wow.
And yeah, I interned in a variety of different commercial law firms as well, and then went to go work in Washington, DC for a non-profit, and then the United States Congress. And I went over to the White House and did an internship in San Francisco at a law firm as well, as a bunch of other stuff like working for the Royal Mail and things like that. And then I became particularly interested in technology, writing my dissertation on blockchain and the potential for criminals and terrorists to manipulate the technology for money laundering. And then I took a course in AI at Oxford Uni. And so that's where my interest sort of came from. And then I created the Legal Lineup, which I'm happy to talk about now, or I could talk about a bit later, depending on whatever you prefer.
Sure, yeah. No, I mean, they sound like really great experiences. And so would you say that you sort of knew that you wanted to become a solicitor from doing that work experience a few years ago? And did you decide to study politics with the intention of going into law, or was it something that you sort of decided like along the way?
I'd say I knew I wanted to do law. I wouldn't say I knew I wanted to be a barrister or a solicitor, and within that, I didn't know if I wanted to be a corporate lawyer or that kind of stuff. So I knew I was interested in law from a young age, but I didn't really know why necessarily. But I went on that journey. I studied business A-levels, so I became quite like interested in the business world and that kind of stuff.
Well, I suppose they're all interconnected anyway. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. When it came to applying for training contracts and getting your offer at Pinsent Masons, what was your journey like? Was it smooth? Was it a bit sort of bumpy along the way?
I think
experience.
I got a shed load of rejections in my first application cycle because I didn't really know what I was doing, and I didn't really know where I was applying, to be honest.
Right.
And even in the second one, I got a lot of rejections, and so I found it quite tough because I thought, I've got loads of different experiences, legal and non-legal. Like, why am I not getting there? Because I felt like I was a qualified candidate, kind of thing. But then eventually, you pick up on your weaknesses, whether it's the type of testing and practicing those, and the type of tests like Watson Glaser, psychometric, diagrammatic, all the different kinds of tests for different kind of firms, and improve in that sense. Or you improve in your writing style. And become more concise with it, and that's how I overcame those kind of challenges.
Excellent. And I just want to pick up on the fact that you're, sort of rewind to the fact that you're a non-law student. Did you find that there were any challenges that you needed to overcome specifically because you were a non-law applicant? I mean, I know that firms generally tend to hire from both law and non-law backgrounds in sort of equal measures, but I just wondered from a practical point whether you found any challenges and how you overcame those.
I'd say mainly the imposter syndrome of thinking that, I don't know all this legal terminology and jargon. How am I going to, fit in?
Yeah.
Have anything to justify why I'm there, like law students necessarily. But to be honest, like lawyers speak in two different languages. They speak in the legal jargon sense and then in the normal sense. So being able to switch between the two is really important. And I think law firms recognize that they can kind of teach you the law, but they can't teach you to be the type of person they'd want to hire. So I think that don't necessarily worry about, not knowing the law. And that was something that took me a while to understand, that, I don't necessarily have everything that I would think they would want, but it's not necessarily what they think. And a lot of the non-legal experiences that I had were quite transferable and quite useful in a legal environment. So a lot of the work experiences I had at law firms weren't actually that useful because they weren't that high level stuff. It was more just like, low level stuff because I wasn't a lawyer, so they couldn't give me top stuff. So the non-legal experiences where I had greater higher positions of responsibility, I think were more valuable to describe in my application and explain, because I was more involved with different tasks rather than, more administrative stuff.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting actually, especially because, well, I don't know if this is your experience, but in my experience with assessment centres and interviews, it's sort of rare that you get asked legal questions anyway. So it does seem to be, with commercial law anyway, sort of more focused on business. And with the interview questions, like you say, you can draw from experiences from anywhere. It doesn't need to be from legal work experience. And actually it can be more interesting and more diverse if you do bring up different experiences from other areas. So yeah, I think that's a great message to share with anyone who might be a non-law student who's listening to the podcast, who's maybe a bit worried about that. It's definitely, I'm sure that your experiences will really help them. So moving on to the actual application stage, and I mean, I know you said that you had some rejections at the beginning. I wonder sort of what your tips are for actually getting to pass the application stage.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I guess my main tip, in my opinion anyway, is to focus on tangible links between yourself and the firm, and don't necessarily look at these firms as all the same. And whilst people say, oh, they're all very different, they are, in the sense that there are things between certain firms that will be the reasons why you're applying, and you have to find those similarities between certain firms as to what you're looking for in your training contract. So I definitely think in terms of passing the application stage, you'll really stand out if you can demonstrate not only that you've done your research, and I don't mean just saying, oh, like this award, you've got this award and that award. I mean more just like finding tangible links between the experiences that you've had, like, and why you're actually applying. Because if they're a firm that's particularly strong in shipping, but you've got zero experience in shipping or anything like that, and I don't mean shipping law, I mean like, you may have done a summer abroad and you may have done an internship in something related to that, and that's why you're interested. Find tangible links. They don't necessarily need to be high caliber. They can just be tangible links of some kind. So for me, Pinsent Masons, I was particularly interested in technology. I know that they do quite a lot of tech, and they're quite a strong TMT practice. And I am interested in that. I've founded a tech platform. I studied at Oxford, like a tech course, like a short one, and then I also wrote my dissertation on it. So I could clearly demonstrate I am interested in that practice area that the firm does. And so that's one top tip that I would give.
Definitely, yeah, I completely agree. I think it makes your application come across as a lot more genuine as well, and not so just like you're sort of maybe going down a list of firms and then trying to apply sort of anywhere where, like you said, you might be applying to like a firm that's really strong in shipping, and then a firm that's really strong in somewhere else. But if you don't have any sort of genuine links, then I think it even becomes a lot more difficult to write, and that probably comes across as maybe a less genuine application. And what about your tips for passing the assessment centre? Because I personally found those quite daunting. So, I'd really like to hear your sort of advice for passing those.
Yeah, I found it very stressful. I mean, I would say don't worry about what you don't have, and worry about what you do and how you package it, because that's all they're going to see. So there's a lot of people that sit next to you that will have different experiences, and they'll just say one or two comments and you'll be like, oh my God, like I didn't go to X university, or I didn't do this, that, or the other. And don't worry about what everyone else has, because you're only competing against yourself at the assessment center, and you've got to that point. They want you to do well. So don't necessarily, the more you pressure yourself, the more you're going to struggle, I think. So definitely, think about what you can bring to the table rather than what everyone else is bringing to the table, and work collectively with people, and don't necessarily feel like you're in competition with anyone, because you're really only in competition with yourself. So when you're working in group projects and stuff, like, be a good listener as much as you're a good talker. So I think that, in my opinion, it's really good to be able to listen to people when you're at work. So as in, I feel like they want to see that they could work with you, and they want to see how you work with others, as much as they want to see how good of a leader you are.
For sure. Yeah. I've heard that quite a few times actually from hiring partners and graduate recruitment. One of the most important things is that you appear to be someone that's easy to work with, and that you'd want to sort of spend those late nights where you're working on a deal, that you can get on with everyone anyway. So yeah, I think that's fantastic advice. So you were actually on a vacation scheme, weren't you, before you secured your training contract offer? So could you maybe provide some advice on the best way to stand out and how to succeed at the vacation scheme? And in particular, I'm not sure if your vacation scheme was virtual. Perhaps if it was, you could maybe talk a bit about that.
Yeah. So my vacation scheme was virtual because we were going into COVID. So I think that people are at a massive advantage, even if they don't think they are at the moment, in my opinion, because when you're on these things, even though they're virtual, you've got an opportunity to reach out to so many more people that not necessarily would be able to before, and you get that one-to-one time, like where they sit down with you for an hour and have a chat with you and talk to you. Because people are at home, they have that availability and they have that time. Whereas before, I don't know if you would have been able to catch a partner and speak to them for a long period of time consistently each week, where you have allocated slots to speak to people. So I think, make the most out of that, and network with people outside of the office and at other offices across the business for the firm, and kind of get to know how the business operates rather than necessarily siloing yourself. Because I think that it's a great opportunity to kind of speak to loads of different people in the firm, and learn from them. I think as well, another massive advantage is that because it's virtual, you can kind of reach out to people on LinkedIn, and kind of speak to people in a way that, again, might not necessarily have been possible. So in terms of converting vacation schemes to training contracts, I think that if you're on a vacation scheme, like, you've got a good chance if you put yourself out there and don't necessarily be too holding back.
Okay, so it's sort of more about making the most out of it, speaking to a lot of people, and maybe asking questions rather than just sort of sitting behind your screen and just sort of working nonstop and not making those connections.
Yeah, put yourself out there, I'd say.
Yeah, that's good to know. So your book has just been released recently, I believe, The Legal Insider. So I'd love to hear more about that and how it came about.
Yeah, sure. So it's been covered by, I guess, different people, like yourself, Legal Cheat, lawcareers.net. It was in the Financial Times Innovative Lawyers Report and was picked up by a New York Times bestselling author as well. And what it is
incredible.
What it is it's basically unfiltered insights from paralegal to partner level, working at international law firms and in-house. So got people who've secured training contracts as paralegals and all that kind of stuff, kind of sharing their insight and stuff like that. And I've got lawyers in different departments explaining what they do in those departments and the responsibilities and the kind of things that happen in a law firm. So it's kind of good for building commercial awareness in that sense. I've also got stuff on diversity. So I've got like lawyers with disabilities, like actually talking about what they think, and like LGBT lawyers and BAME lawyers, kind of talking about the different experiences and how they came to law, and giving advice really to other people. And so the objective with the book was kind of to explore my own curiosity. Despite the fact that I'd got a training contract, I wanted to know more about the industry that I was going into. And so this is what I did. And yeah, I mean, it was a great experience. And I think that if anyone wants to kind of know about what happens in a law firm and different departments that they might not know about, and, you know, are scared to talk about in an interview, you can kind of pick it up, whether you're, you know, a paralegal, a trainee, or a future trainee, or anyone who's aspiring solicitor, because essentially you can kind of hear these insights from people at different companies. So I had the head lawyer, one of the senior lawyers at Uber, talking about bringing the company on the stock exchange last year. I had lawyers at Arsenal talking about bringing Coldplay, the band, to the Emirates. People at Channel 4, BBC, like loads of different companies. People who've done training contracts at Channel 4, and, you know, people who've moved from Dentons to UBS, so private practice to in-house, and the reversal of that with other people moving from different firms. So yeah, it was a great project, and all the money being raised is going to be used to support financially students wanting to study the GDL LPC.
That's amazing. It sounds so interesting. I really like how you've sort of covered in-house and private practice, and spoken to so many people, because, you know, law is such a vast profession, really, isn't it? So I think if you're just sort of at uni or just graduated or haven't got any experience working in the sector, then it can just seem like a bit of a question mark. So yeah, it sounds like a really helpful book. And yeah, I really like the fact that the proceeds are going to help others. I think that's a really nice idea. So what I'm going to do for the listeners is leave a link to the book in the show notes. So if you want to get a copy, then you can find the details there.
I think I wanted it to not be very London centric. So there's lawyers who are working in the regions as well as lawyers in Scotland. So it's kind of like quite all encompassing. If someone wants to know about what it's like to be a lawyer in another city that's outside of London, what's that like, and what's the work like at an international law firm, and also in Scotland. So if anyone wants to check that out, there's some stuff in there for that.
Brilliant. So you've also founded successful platforms, The Legal Lineup and Global Tech Loop. So could you tell us a bit about those?
Yeah, so The Legal Lineup is a group of me and 6 other future trainees at international law firms such as Baker McKenzie, Norton Rose Fulbright, Pinsent Masons, Linklaters, Clifford Chance, Allen and Overy, Freshfields, and we all kind of provide advice together. We co-founded it together, and we provide advice for aspiring solicitors, and commercial awareness articles, application advice. We've run various events with ULaw, BPP, Leeds University, York University, Sheffield, loads of different universities, and we've got one coming up with ULaw actually in a couple of weeks' time on legal tech, I think. And yeah, and we've done several other things as well. So we created like an internship. We helped support an internship be delivered with Interlaw Diversity Forum, where companies like Netflix and Google and stuff like that kind of came to present on a variety of topics to help students basically. And the Global Tech Loop is a magazine which we release every month, as well as running events. So we ran a female empowerment event where we had the chief security officer of Microsoft, as well as several CEOs of startups there, female leaders kind of sharing their insight on what they've done. And then we ran an entrepreneur event where we had different people come on the panel to kind of talk about, you know, how to become an entrepreneur, how to start businesses and stuff like that. But the magazine itself is a variety of interviews and insights shared from different industries in tech. So we recently released one, and we're going to be releasing another one next month. And it's basically insight from people working at Google, Amazon, IBM, Apple, bunch of different companies, basically tech companies and stuff like that, whether it's startup or big scale stuff. So, I mean, basically insight from all these different people in the tech space.
Well, it sounds fantastic and so inspiring as well. For any listeners that want to maybe start their own platform or start building an online presence of their own, whether that be related to law or something else like tech or anything else, what advice do you have for them? Because you're obviously quite experienced now in creating these platforms. So yeah, I'd love to hear your advice.
I guess the main thing I would say is just like, don't worry about doing it to kind of impress anyone. Just kind of do it because you saw something that you were either interested in learning more about, or like you saw a gap where you were like, there should be that. So, I mean, with the Global Tech Loop, I'm really interested in technology. That's why I do it. That's why I keep doing it. And so it's very easy to kind of start a blog or start a platform, that kind of stuff. But like, you only really keep it up and keep it going if you're really interested in it, because ultimately there's no like financial gain or anything like that. So, I mean, look for something that's really interested in you. So I've seen really great networks kind of cropping up, and like they're really different, and they kind of have their focus. And I think that's really important to have a focus and not just think like how I can kind of copy what's already out there, but kind of add differently and add value in a way that's different to what everyone else is doing. And that's really hard. But I mean, I guess if you want to start something like this, I think the best thing that you can do is focus on what you would like to know that isn't already out there, and kind of how you can add value that way. And I've seen some really great stuff kind of coming out recently. And just, yeah, I mean, it doesn't necessarily need to be even law related. Like you can start a platform, something completely different, like I did with the tech stuff. But it doesn't have to be technology. It can be anything. It's not just about, I guess, what will make you the most employable, but it will be the kind of thing that you're most interested in, because that's where your interests lie. So if anyone wants any advice on this, like you can drop me a message. I'm happy to have a chat with anyone about anything we've discussed, or just in general if they've got any questions.
That's so helpful. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, I agree. I think if you're passionate about something, then you will actually spend those hours that it might take. It's not hot. It's not easy, is it? We're all busy. So to make time for something, you need to be passionate about it. Otherwise, it's just not going to be something that you keep up. So I think that's great advice. So again, you've been really productive since lockdown, which I find really inspiring. So how do you stay motivated? And do you have any tips for anyone that's working from home at the moment on how they can be a bit more either productive or work more efficiently or more effectively?
Gosh, big questions. I don't know. I don't know how I'd advise someone to stay motivated. I guess, I mean, I'm not a motivational speaker or anything like that, so I don't know. But I mean, in terms of me, like, as in, like, I play sport, but at the moment, obviously, I'm just running and stuff like that. And to be honest, like, I'm just indoors all day. So for me, like, doing exercise, honestly, like, saves me, because it's just like I can get away from it all. So then when I come back for it, it's like it's okay to push on, kind of thing. I mean, for me, like, I find sport quite a good way to kind of like get my mind off things and, like, as you would say, like, stay motivated or productive or whatever. So I mean, sport would be the advice, but that's just what works for me.
Sure. I find, well, I've been going for walks quite a lot, well, since March really, but yeah, it's just a bit annoying when the weather starts raining and I don't want to go out. But yeah, I'm going to try and take your advice and go for a walk a bit later on. But anyway, thank you so much for joining us today, Matt. It's been great to have you on the show, and you've shared some really helpful advice for both law and non-law applicants who are looking to break into the industry. And I'll definitely leave a link to all of your platforms and your book in the show notes so people can check those out. But yeah, thank you again for joining us.
Yeah, cheers. And I guess the tail end of that is that, like, the book is just one thing, and, like, don't feel like you necessarily need to buy that, because there's loads of free resources that I've produced that I'm happy to provide to people as well. So if anyone feels like they don't want to spend the money or whatever, just feel free to drop me a message, and I can send some free resources as well. Anything I can do to help, really.
Fantastic. Yeah, actually, I remember that you have shared quite a few resources. I think that I've taken some off you before for advice when I was going through the process. So yeah, I just think it's amazing how much you're sort of managing to kind of give back. Yeah, it's really inspiring.
Cheers. Thanks again. Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Take care.
Cheers.
To hear more of the Student Lawyers podcast, hit the subscribe button and leave us a star rating and review. If you would like to join The Student Lawyer as a writer, please email hello@thestudentlawyer.com. We'd like to thank Felix Knight for producing this podcast today.